This time around for the journey, joined by somebody who has only recently celebrated a surprise, but we'll get to that throughout the next half hour or so. But Sharon Jacka is a familiar name around the Albury Wodonga region. Welcome to the journey.
Oh, thank you. It's great to be here.
Yeah, it's something a little bit different for you. Before we get into some of your, I guess, life story, let's start with the most prominent part of how did you come to be sitting here? What brought you to Albury Wodonga? We often look at whether people are born here or what the lure is.
Yeah, okay. My husband, Dave, and our two teenage children arrived in Albury in 1994. We moved here from a little remote town called Balranald. I think you may be familiar with it, Kev, but a lot of people are not. So we made the journey here, and it was basically a decision to find an area that we felt would be great for the children. They were, as I said, early teenagers, and we thought Albury Wodonga offered that with a lot of sport, education, etc. So that's how we come to be in Albury, yeah.
And so, you mentioned that I know Balranald because I should probably highlight nice and early. We're sort of second cousins once removed or something like that, aren't we?
Absolutely, yeah. Yep, your mum and I are first cousins. That's correct,
There you go. So a little bit of a family reunion, which hasn't... it's happened a couple of times on the journey, actually. It's just amazing how anybody who usually lives somewhere along the Murray will have connections across the whole length. So once you arrived, what did you do when you came?
I had a position at managing a motel in central Albury, and that gave us the opportunity, because it was a huge step. The kids, of course, were like, oh my goodness, we're moving to this big city. And my husband, who had lived in Balranald all his life, was anxious. So it was me driving the bus and saying, come on, let's go. So I had a position as a manager there, which provided us with the security of like living accommodation and an opportunity to know whether we like the area without being too committed. So that's what we started and did that for a couple of years, and by then realised, yep, this is the place to be. Yeah, so that's...
I mentioned at the start a recent sort of celebration and recognition for you. So you became a real estate agent.
Absolutely, yep. It was something that was in the back of my mind for a long time, but I wanted the children to be a bit older so I could then go and do what, able to do that. So I was, it was in 2003, I made that decision to become, and I went to work at Ray White in Albury, and that's where I've been ever since. So I never ventured to any other area.
So, on to the recognition part. So, almost a couple of decades with the one nationally and internationally recognised company. You've just recently been announced as the recipient of a fairly significant nod.
Absolutely. Look, I couldn't believe it. To be a life member of Ray White is incredible. They don't hand them out every day. It's not like, okay, you've made enough sales for the year, you can be a life member or whatever. They decide. And I've often looked and thought, oh, wow, that person, they're amazing. And then for them to announce that I was a life member was incredible, absolutely. I mean, I worked in sales when I first went into the industry at Ray White, and then in 2007 I purchased the business. So it then went ahead in leaps and bounds. I had 3 shops at one stage, Howlong, Corowa and Albury. And along with that, my children worked for me. None of that was a plan initially. It was just how it evolved, and it was one, and I guess Ray White look at that and think of it as, like a great achievement, which is great because a lot of times, it could be someone making it happen in the cities and whatever, but to win that award and being in a regional area was incredible.
So it's a fair contrast from coming from a place like Balranald to then be able to sort of dominate an industry like real estate in a catchment area like Albury Wodonga and surrounds. I'd imagine you probably had some pretty serious drive, the network you'd need to be successful in that industry. Talk a little bit about how you can cement yourself and be successful in there.
Look, it was huge, because it is a huge contrast from where I came from to now. But I look at it, and I look at it in anything in life. If you really want to do it, you put your mind to it. I was always a person that thought, well, okay, whatever job I've had, I've got to understand it. There's no point going, I can do this without knowing how it all happens behind the scenes. And that's me. To be successful, you've got to, do the work, but also understand the work. And I guess real estate is no different. You must, not everyone can do it. It's not something you can do the course and become an agent, but to be successful is really doing the hard yards and understanding it and understanding people, which is interesting too.
Can be the best and worst part of life, people,
Absolutely.
can't they?
Yep.
Let's talk about your children for a moment, because you have been a prominent, obviously, business figure, particularly in real estate, but so too, as you mentioned, have your family. And I guess if we can go personal for a moment, your son Carl, talk about cementing himself within a community, within a region, and being a loved person. Let's talk about Carl for a moment. And I guess what's been highlighted through that is your entire family and connections, commitment to community and the whole region.
Yeah, look, I look at it and think, with Carl, he, even from a young age, when he arrived in Albury, he loved sport, and anyone that knew Carl knew that was his passion. Sport was first, everything else was behind. But he had a great, he had a gift, and a gift with people, and he was able to reach out and he was always wanting to help someone or be part of it. And he may not have been, when I say his passion was sport, it doesn't mean he was the best at sport, but it was his whole approach to whatever club he was involved in. He threw himself in 100%. And I guess maybe he inherited that, to understand, to get in and understand what he was doing rather than just be there. And he did. He did touch a lot of people in that way, of all ages. It wasn't just his own age group. I often say, he knew so many people. Some people might end up, being 80 or 90 years old and not have travelled the journey he travelled with meeting people. And they were all, I meet people often that are older than me that say, oh, are you Carl's mum? I knew him through da-da-da. And it still amazes me. Yeah.
It's been, I guess, an unfortunate sort of personal circumstance, but has been so beneficial for the community when we talk about the Regional Cancer Centre. Team Jacka. And over the years, Relay for Lives and things like that as well. That family name's well cemented within our community now.
Absolutely. Look, I've always had that community mind about us to help others that are less fortunate. That's been how basically we raised the kids. It was like that. But doing the fundraising, we felt that we could, Relay for Life, Sunshine Walk, whatever, to help and be part of that. So with Ray White, I was able to gain that extra exposure, I guess, to get people on board, and it was to raise that money. And interesting enough, even Ray White, the company itself, corporate level, were always quick to support us and help out with donations and things. So we reached out as far as we could when we've been doing these fundraisers, because at the end of the day, if it helps someone, yes, we did lose Carl, and I have my own personal battle, but we look at that and think, well, it's about helping everyone else, not just about our journey. Yeah.
It's a wonderful, I guess, what would you call it? A quality, I guess. It's a wonderful quality to have within the community, but certainly something that you've probably clearly spread throughout your family.
Yeah.
So real estate industry, 24/7.
Yep, absolutely.
365.
Yep.
I'm sure that you've probably sold a house on Christmas Day before.
Yeah.
You speak to most real estate agents, and it's always, any day's a time to make a sale,
Indeed, yeah.
Some sacrifices through that sort of industry over the years?
Look, in a sense, however, saying that, I always, I guess when I say sacrifices, maybe, you may not have been able to do every single thing that was put in front of you, but I have a little thing in life where I go, that sometimes you've got to learn a no to someone is a yes to yourself. So you have, learning from that, you're able to balance it. But Dave and I are very, we always just, the kids came first no matter what, Andrea and Carl. And so we made time. We'd have family dinner once a week, once the kids had left home, etc., doing all that. So we made those times. But other things, we learned, sometimes you had to say no. But, at the end of the day, it became a balance and you worked it out. And, I have no regrets, all those hours. No, because I loved every moment of it. Yeah.
Often talk to people about their hobbies. Mm-hmm. So when you are working 24/7 and you may have found yourself some downtime, what were you doing with your time?
To be honest, they're the things that I guess you put aside, like those actual hobbies, I guess by the time I started real estate, I was in my mid-40s, so my netball was behind me and all those things that I loved and played forever. So I guess, at the end of the day, the hobbies became things like we would always go to, so if Carl was playing football somewhere, we would go to that on a Saturday, and watch him, or when he was coaching, we would do that. My daughter Andrea, she loves, her background before real estate was tourism, so she knows every little spot around the place. So most people know her. She loves to be out and about. So I would go with her. Like we'd have little days at our local wineries and things. So that was something that I always made time, to do those sorts of things. So beyond that, with the hobbies, not really. I mean, now we've recently, because I'm basically backed out of the business and just in the background helping with wherever I'm needed, we've bought a caravan. So Dave and I are going to, that's our next little hobby, to get to use that as much as we can. Yeah.
I like it, the semi-retirement, getting back some of that time.
Absolutely. Yeah, it'd be my time. Yeah.
And people you admire, who do you think you admire the most?
Oh, you know what? It's tricky when people say that, because incredibly there's so many people out there that you come into your life that are so inspirational, and you think, wow, I really, they've done great. But when I strip it right back, I'm probably a person that I have the admiration is for people that have made it in life and are successful from hard work and taking a risk here and there. Then, these, the big names that are up there. I mean, they all work hard, don't get me wrong, but I just look at life and I think, have admiration, I look at, there's no one, I can't pinpoint anyone in particular, but when I come across these people and I think, you really deserve that. You've done the hard yards there, and made it happen. I once worked for a fellow for a little while, and he had started, I was his manager, for an example, Ted was a owned an big air conditioning company, but he started his business many years ago by building them just in the backyard, and then became one of the biggest now manufacturers in Australia. So, people like that, I think, when they've started, and so they're the people I really have a lot of admiration for.
Yeah. Good one. You spoke about that achievement where people you can recognise that they've had to put in hard yards to get to where they are. What's your biggest achievement in life so far, do you think?
Oh, look, beyond being a mum, everyone says, I became a mum, whatever. I think probably stepping into the real estate world, it opened up a huge door. I'd always pushed myself prior to real estate, wherever I worked, to, as I said earlier, to understand wherever I worked, so I could, perform at the best. But into real estate, it was, my biggest achievement. Because I think what had happened, without me knowing, as I said earlier, it created opportunities for my children as well. And, I look at that, but also never thought I would get to the level I got as an agent. So I guess when I look at that, it's probably my biggest achievement. Yeah.
Good one. We've all had sliding door moments in life where you could take the fork in the road. To me, it sounds like chatting to you about the move from Balranald might have been you choosing one sliding door and telling the family to come with you.
I know. You're probably right there. That was huge to do that, because understandably, they were settling in. I had one in year 8, one in year 9, and a husband who was very comfortable living in a very small country town. and anyone that knows Dave, we're chalk and cheese in a lot of ways. We've, he's the quiet, pokes along, and then to move here, he was like, oh, gee, we didn't know anybody. I had a sister living in Wodonga, but apart from that, we had no idea. So coming from a town where you know everyone to knowing no one, and then living in a motel where you still don't really get to know anyone, and that's 7 days a week, it was like, probably that would have been, definitely. It was, so it was on my shoulders. Every time there was a bit of a crossword in the house, it was like, well, we're going back to Balranald. And I was like, looks like. But anyway, look, they all stayed, so that's the plus of it all, yeah.
The beautiful thing about these journeys, I think we're 4 years into this now, what I'm discovering as I talk to people is there's a reason Albury Wodonga and the region works the way it does, and it's a very common thread. But the answer to a lot of the questions that I ask is different from each person. But if you join them all together, probably the principles and the morals are very similar within our community. But you mentioned earlier on one that I hadn't heard from any of our subjects yet, a no to somebody else is a yes to yourself. Great bit of advice, like a great mantra to live by, I think, particularly in this really busy life that we're all in at the moment, even with COVID. But are there any other great sort of inspirational quotes or mantras that you've seen over the years that you're like, that's one to live by? Yeah,
look, there's one I do always. When you meet people in life, or even sometimes it doesn't have to be just meeting people, it's your behaviour, whatever. I say it happens for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. Because quite often you can get caught up with something and, could be your staff and someone leaves, and initially I used to be so thinking, oh, why are they leaving me, And I realised then that people are in your life for those reasons. They're not there forever. It's a reason or a season or a lifetime. So I base that a lot in a lot of my everyday, so you don't dwell on things, and you try to understand then that you don't always, it's not with you for a lifetime. And probably the other one, which I also use with raising the children, I certainly did, but I've carried it through, is never let the sun go down in anger. So what we do, you fix things, you don't dwell on it. If you've had a bad day or someone's upset, you don't leave it and dwell on it. Fix it before you go to sleep. So it was a bit tricky in the house if the kids had a fight, because I wouldn't let them go to sleep until they were friends. So we had a few late nights.
I love it. We like to take the trip down memory lane. I often ask people, what did you plan to be as a kid? Like, when you're a 5, a 10, a 15-year-old. I'm guessing real estate agent wasn't maybe the dream or desire, but what was yours?
I know. No, I never would have thought real estate. No. Again, living out in Balranald, so I thought my life should be just getting married and having children. So it was I would have loved to have been a hairdresser, but my mum, at the time, I had 2 older sisters that became nurses, so it was a little bit like, you can be a nurse or nothing. So it was nothing, because I can't stand blood. I wouldn't have been a good nurse. Anyway, I never, as a kid, I didn't aspire a lot, to be honest, because living in this little town, a lot of people, in those little towns, they get married young, they have children. So I guess it all changed. As I said, in 1994, our lives changed completely coming to Albury.
Hindsight, it's always 20/20, perfect vision looking back. Any advice you would have given a younger you?
Maybe enjoy school a bit more than I did. I finished school at 15. I was not really loving all that. So I guess, I've had clearly to work hard to be successful through life, because it didn't happen from having a great, high education or anything. So maybe I could have made a few changes there, but I don't really have any regrets, no.
5 or 10 years from now, you've hooked up the caravan. Where have you been? What does the next few years of your journey look like, do you think?
Look, if everything heads in the right direction and, like health reasons, etc., if that all plays out, we would love to, explore, because we've always had the dream to have a van for many years. We managed a caravan park for 10 years at Balranald, so we got to see that lifestyle way back in the 80s and thought one day we'll do that. So it's happened now. We've got the van. So we'd love to just explore Australia. Also, like in the next 5 or 10 years, also instrumental with the grandchildren. We've got 3 grandchildren. They're all nudging being teenagers at the moment, the 3 of them. So it's great we've been a great part of their life, but we'd love to be still part of that, while they're going through those years, having time. And also probably the next, help out where I can. Like now that I've backed out of work, I'd still love to help the community. So voluntary work or doing whatever, just to put my, if someone, that sort of thing. Like I don't, so I think, if I throw all that in together, I think I'm going to be busy.
Yeah. That's good. And it seems like you're one of those people that just takes it in your stride because it's what got you to where you are today. And in recent times, obviously, COVID's worked its way into these journey conversations. And as we chat now, vaccination rates are high and everyone's feeling up and about and positive and things are reopening and all the rest, and then we look overseas and we still cautiously think, oh, geez, they're going to 4th, 5th waves and more lockdowns over Christmas and things like that. And what's a pandemic taught you? Because I want this to be well documented, because I feel like none of us sort of came into this knowing exactly what one is or how disruptive it will be or what changes it will make to the world.
Yeah.
What have you learnt?
Look, you're right, because it was thrown, like the start of 2020 was crazy, like for all of us. And to be honest, personally for me, it's been tricky because I felt like I've been in isolation anyway for 2 years because I've had an enormous amount of, since the start of 2020, I was re-diagnosed. So then I had a lot of treatment, major surgery. I was in Melbourne for 5 weeks last year, and then this year, no surgery, so personally, I've been in lockdown anyway. But I've got to watch a lot of TV because you're sitting there feeling yuck. And I look at it all and I think one of the things I feel like, I think all of us were going very fast before COVID. It was spiralling out of control really, like families and lifestyles. And I think it all just stopped and it stripped it back. And if there's a positive out of it all, I think families and that had to stop and regroup and do things at home, with the kids, where a lot of, play games, board games, jigsaws, whatever, because they're in lockdown. And I look at that and think that's not a bad thing and people had to learn to cook because some of them were relying on dining out or, delivery, that sort of thing. So I think when I look at that, that's that. This other scary part is that, it's getting everyone back on their feet and businesses. My heart goes out to the businesses that it has affected, like mainly, your entertainment, hospitality, those sort of industries. That's been really, some businesses thrived through it, others certainly didn't.
Sure has. Do you think... Did anything change in terms of what you valued or the morals yourself? I mean, you spoke sort of fairly broadly there about, we did all sort of stop and slow down. Do you feel like you were naturally prepared for it anyway?
Oh, no, like I think it was just something that I really look at it and think, I don't know anyone that could come out of it going, oh, that was a breeze. It was like, no, certainly not, yeah.
Yeah, pretty tolling. Oldie but a goodie, so you can have anybody over for dinner. Right? You can have anybody, pick 3 people. Who would they be?
You know what? You could sit and I could rattle off all these superstars and people that I admire, like entertainers, whatever. And this sounds probably different to say it, but what I would love, and it can't happen, I would love to have my husband, Carl, and Andrea, my daughter, to have a dinner, and because Carl and Andrea are now in their 40, or Carl's 40, Andrea's 42, and I would love to just sit with them and we could chat and let them reflect on their life, because, we were certainly instrumental in raising them. However, at that age, when you're 40-odd, you've now sorted your own life out way back, 20 years ago. You've created your own path, and just to look at and talk about their journey and where they're planning to go and how they can reflect, that would be something lovely, because quite often you don't get that opportunity, particularly once they've had they've got they're married, their spouse or they've got children, just to sit without all the extras would be a lovely moment.
Because I'd imagine, obviously, my children are quite young. They're a different conversation when it's an adult child.
And indeed, that's what I mean. Yeah, that's right.
Isn't it? And I guess your children now would have been at the age that you made the substantial decision yourself to jump up and move and then to enter real estate and what have you.
Indeed, yeah. So I just look at that, and that would be who I'd like. And I mean, I could say all these wonderful other people, but that would be something I would have loved to have done. Yeah.
Sweet or savoury, what would you be going for on the table?
Oh, if you asked me a couple of years ago, I would say sweet because I love cooking and I was always the dessert queen.
Yeah.
But lately I seem to have switched. It might be old age. I quite like savoury.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Old age is savoury.
Yeah.
And you said dessert queen. What was the signature dish? I have to ask you that while we're going.
Oh, okay. Probably what people call it, my chocolate pavlova. Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah, that's a family favourite.
I was expecting the old trifle to be trotted out.
I love everyone else's trifle, but not my own. No, I make this mean chocolate pavlova.
And so we've sort of discussed, I guess, the 7-day working week as an agent. Now that you have sort of taken the foot off the accelerator and happily just sit in the background, I'm sure, just waiting for the call upon when you need it and where. You've probably got more time on your weekends. What does this weekend look like?
Well, it's funny you ask that question because this weekend, Dave and I on Saturday are celebrating being married 45 years.
Congratulations.
And we are renewing our vows as well. So funny you ask that because most weekends I'd say, we'll be just gardening. But this weekend we've got at our home for close family and friends, we're having a celebration. So again, Andrea, our daughter's, she's driving behind the celebration, so of course, so it'll be big. But that's what we're doing because we look at it and think 45 years, is a fair haul, but, we've been through a bit, so we decided we'd renew our vows.
Every day's worth celebrating, and I hope that you hook up the caravan with just renewed vows written on the back and maybe some tin cans dragging along the road behind you and you get away on a little honeymoon.
Oh, well, actually, we are going with some friends to Tallangatta for a few days on Monday.
There you go.
With the van.
With the van. Oh, well, it sounds like you've got it all sorted out, and regardless of what you've had to face in life so far, Sharon, you seem to have all just taken it in your stride listening to you talk today, because I have no doubt it's been a pretty tough life at times.
Yeah, it has. Yeah.
And I really appreciate you joining me for the journey and speaking so candidly about parts of your life. And thank you, Sharon Jacka, so much for being part of it.
Thanks, Kev. Really appreciate it. Yeah.